All right, let's see if we're on here. Maybe not. We're gonna see. Try to get our live stream going. I can't see anybody in the chat yet. I know we've got some. Let's see. Have to bear with us tonight, guys. We're going through a new encoding software because YouTube wanted to switch things up on us a little bit. And so we're going to try to see how things are going, try to monitor the chat a little bit as best as we can, and then jump into some calls as well. So it's telling me on my end I can't connect to the chat, so I'm not being able to see too many. Let me see. Try to monitor as best we can here on our phone. So what's going on, everybody? I see we've got John Hopkins, who will be a little late. No worries. DM, nice to have you here. And once again, appreciate those kind words. Always enjoy talking with you. Cyclone Mitch, good to have you. Emperor of Rome, our top two moderators on the line tonight. Appreciate having you guys on with us. And of course, appreciate all the work you do as moderator as well. Dontron Plays, what's going on? Nice to have you. Yes, I'm super pumped for the NFL draft tomorrow night. It's going to be a huge, huge day. One of the biggest sporting events we've had in a very, very long time. And then, of course, you know, just seeing where some of the top college prospects are going to land. It's going to be a huge night. And it's going to be really, really interesting once we hit around pick 3 all the way until the end. So super pumped for that. Twadi Latte, nice. The football 7th is on. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate all of your support and you spreading the word right here at the Gridiron Expert. So I'll be talking with you here pretty soon, but I really appreciate that. So excited to have everybody on. Once again, the chat's not working on our laptop here, but I'm going to keep track of it as best as we can on our phone. And then, of course, we'll be taking your live calls here very, very soon as well. So let's get started here. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We've gone through a couple pleasantries. We've got a couple guys on the line, and we're so glad to have every single one of you. I hope you guys are all doing well. I know we're all kind of going through some rough times right now. You're in quarantine, social distancing. Some of you may be still going through work, having to go to work. Some of you may still be having to do school, mostly online, I'm sure. But wherever it is and wherever you are, just hang in there. We're all going to get through this, and we're super happy that all of you could join us here tonight on YouTube for this live call-in show to talk anything and everything college football. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We want to be here for you guys. We want to hear from you, and we love discussing with you. As I figure out some of these last messages, we're going to open the lines here in 1 second. And of course, for those of you that haven't been here before, it has been a while. It's been a long time since we've done a live stream here on YouTube. But we usually try to limit calls to around 5 minutes long. We want to hear from you. We want to get your take. We want to have a little debate back and forth. We want to try to get through as many callers as possible. So definitely going to be doing that. And really, that's about the only rule. Just come up with a good question, come up with some good discussion, and we're going to do as best as we can to get through as many calls and addressing as many of you in the chat as well. So we see you got Luke's Productions. Nice to have you, Luke. Scott Bankale. Nice to have you as well. Always providing some very insightful analysis and great questions as well. So Scott, we're happy to have you along with everybody else. And Ryan Mell, of course, I think I overlooked you a second ago. Super pumped to have you here as well. So let's just jump right into it, guys. I'm going to plug the phone in. We're going to try to get through as many questions on here as possible, both through the chat and through the calls. And if I'm lucky, I might have a new graphic we might be able to pull up here. See what we can do. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. If not, it might not have worked, but we're going to go ahead and put in the live call number right now, 901-297-4669. 4-5-4-5. Kind of gotten rid of all the pleasantries here, and we just want to start talking ball. We want to start talking some ball. Cyclone Mitch says Tampa Bay is winning the Super Bowl. 20 Latte. What do you think of Pitt? Easily over 6.5 wins. Things we'll certainly address here. I'll talk about you, Cyclone Mitch, first. Just your comment here about Tampa Bay winning the Super Bowl now. You know, Tom Brady leaves New England to go down to Tampa Bay to go become the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that was a move that I think surprised a lot of people. I think that was a move that shocked everybody, deciding to leave the franchise that he's been with for 20 years. 20 years. He leaves New England to go to Tampa Bay. At the end of his career, a lot of people are kind of relating that to when Joe Montana, left the 49ers and played for the Kansas City Chiefs. Some of you may have known that. Some of you may have not. It's basically the same thing. Joe Montana will always be remembered for being a 49er, not a Chief. He didn't win anything with the Chiefs, didn't get him to a Super Bowl, didn't win a Super Bowl. Brady might be able to do that in Tampa Bay. And his chances of winning a Super Bowl just went way up because yesterday, Rob Gronkowski decided to come out of retirement and go down to Tampa Bay to play with Tom Brady to reunite. And there are rumors circulating right now that maybe, just maybe, that was the plan all along. Was that Gronkowski and Brady were both just about fed up with Bill Belichick. They were ready to get out. Gronk retired, and we knew he had a bunch of health problems. We knew that. But Gronk chooses to retire, takes a year off of football or a year off of Belichick, knowing Brady was going to leave and go somewhere else. And when Brady did, Gronk was going to come reunite. That's exactly what they did, now doing it here in Tampa Bay. But you put that all together, guys. You put that together with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Rob Gronkowski, Bucs are going to be very dangerous. We've got our first caller here. We're going to take a look at it. All right, so we've got our first caller here. First caller that we've had in about 5 months or so, I'd say, since we did our last call-in show and live stream when the national championship and the college football playoffs were announced. We've got Justin Cook on the line from Jonesboro. How are you, Justin?
Hey, I'm doing good. Is this Alex, the gridiron expert?
Yes, sir. That would be him.
Hey, man, I'm just kind of curious. What do you think the Cowboys are going to do in this draft coming up tomorrow, pick 17?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are we had a couple questions earlier about the draft and how excited we are about that. Cowboys have a couple needs that they have to address first. We know they're set at quarterback with Dak Prescott. Some people might like him, some people might not. We know they've got Ezekiel Elliott. Biggest strengths or biggest areas they've got to be looking at are safety. For me, I would say cornerback as well. And then up front, you lose a guy like Travis Frederick, you need to bolster up that offensive line again, which at one point in time was one of the best they had in the entire NFL. But being up at number 17 is kind of a difficult spot for the Cowboys because if they've got their heart set on somebody, especially within the cornerback or safety area, guys in the secondary, it would be wise of them to trade up. They could very well trade up from 17th to anywhere between, I'd say, 8th and 12th. But a lot of people are speculating, Justin, that they're going to go Javon Kinlaw, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina. And I don't see that would be a bad pick either, considering how strong the defensive line already is for Dallas. You get a little young guy in there, you give him some depth along that defensive line. The Cowboys' secondary isn't bad, needs a little bit of help, but I'm thinking Kinlaw, or if possible, I'd love to see him grab C.J. Henderson from Florida. They just have to trade up for that pick.
Yeah, C.J. Henderson is one of the guys that I really have looked forward to hopefully seeing at that spot at 17. I think he's going to be long gone, though. The defensive end out of LSU is one that I've heard a lot about, along with Zach Bond. I've heard a lot about him being possible defensive end pick. I think that in like that third to fourth round, you start looking at center to replace Travis Frederick. And I'd like you to look into that Tyler. I can't say his last name. I think it's Badaz, I think what you might call it. But he's somebody that's from Wisconsin, plays guard and center. So I think he might be able to replace him with another Wisconsin guy, kind of like Travis Frederick, in those early to middle rounds. But C.J. Henderson seems to be a popular name going around, along with Kinlaw, if he's still there. If that run on offensive tackles and wide receivers happens. So,
yeah.
Who are you thinking After that first pick with Joe Burrow, who are you thinking after that?
I think it's a foregone conclusion. You've got Joe Burrow going first, number 1 to the Bengals. Then Chase Young will go to the Redskins right after that. Chase Young's the best athlete in this draft by far, defensive end out of Ohio State. So, I think the first 20 minutes of this draft are going to be pretty cut and dry. And then after that, once you hit pick 3, it's going to start getting really interesting. It's going to be who's going to trade up, who's going to trade down, and the biggest question is going to be quarterbacks. We know Burrow's going first overall, but what happens to Tua? Does he get picked in the top 10, or does he fall outside of that? Does Justin Herbert get drafted as high as many think, or is he overrated and maybe not NFL ready as many people think? So that's going to be the million-dollar question, but I'll be shocked if the first 2 are anything but Joe Burrow and Chase Young.
Yeah, what about after that? Everybody said it's a foregone conclusion that the Miami Dolphins are going to end up choosing a quarterback at 5. There's been talk today, though, I heard, where they're talking about jumping ahead of the Giants and trying to get the top offensive tackle. And I've been seeing everything with the Giants taking Okuda. So have you heard anything about it? The Giants are now looking at offensive tackle, and that's what's making the Dolphins want to jump up.
Well, that's actually what we have in our mock draft right now. We released a mock draft just yesterday with our first 10 picks, and we actually have the Dolphins trading up to the 3rd pick over the Lions. We have the Dolphins selecting a quarterback. We have them selecting Tua, actually. The Giants need more help, to me, on the offensive line or on the defensive line. And we have them taking an offensive lineman right now. But I can tell you one thing, Justin, that the Dolphins don't need to focus on the offensive line right now with their 5th pick or 4th or 3rd, wherever they trade up. They've got to get a quarterback. It's going to be Tua or it's going to be Justin Herbert. If they don't choose one of those players with the top, whatever pick it is, 5th, 4th, or 3rd, then fans will riot. So, but I do agree. What you said. The Giants, I think, will be taking an offensive tackle with their 4th pick. The Dolphins have to get a quarterback first before they can even think about bolstering up that line.
All right, cool. Well, I'll continue listening. I'll hang up and let somebody else call in.
All right, appreciate it, Justin. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
All right, so that was Justin out of Jonesboro. And we had a caller, whoever it was, caller was calling in the middle of that. But we're always going to try to do, if we get multiple calls going at one time, we'll probably try to put you on hold. Like I said, we want to try to answer as many questions as possible, so we'll try to answer and put you on hold or something like that. So if you don't get picked up on the first time, keep calling because we want to hear from you. We're going through the rest of these guys in the chat as I'm looking at it. Ryan Mell and Twatty Latte, first off, what do I think of Pittsburgh? Easily had them over 6.5 wins. Pittsburgh's one of those teams that, their fan base is very devoted. I will give them that. They're a fan base that, gives us a lot of hate and a lot of feedback on our picks for them when the season begins. And we're going to take this caller here. We're going to put him on hold so I can finish up that comment.
Nick.
Hey, Nick, we're going to put you on hold for 1 second, bud.
All right, bro.
We know Nick, frequent caller all the time. Love talking to him. But to finish up what you were saying, Twatty Latte, to finish up what we were saying there, Pittsburgh's a team that's probably on average between 6 to 8 wins, and on occasion they have that 4-8, 5-7 season. I haven't taken a deep look at their schedule yet. We don't really release season predictions, obviously, until later. But I would say Pitt is anywhere this year between a 6 to 9 win team, and that's saying a lot. But they surprised me a little bit last year. Great bowl win over Eastern Michigan to close out the year. Usually pretty average, but keep in mind, up until the end, they were in the hunt to make the ACC championship for the 2nd straight year. And that's not easy to do. So Pat Narduzzi doing a phenomenal job there. I would expect another bowl appearance in their future. The question is it going to be 6-6 or is it going to be 7-6? That half, we know that. Us bettors, we know that. When you're betting against the spread or when you're betting on over-under win totals, that half can be the difference between life and death. It's super frustrating. So, Twatty, I'll get back to you here in a few months about that one, and we'll definitely discuss a little bit more. So we got Nicholas Thompson coming in on the chat. I believe it's probably him on the line as well, so we're going to get to him here in 1 second. Always happy to have him. Going through Mike Myrick, what's up? How are you doing? And, of course, go Noles as always. Always happy to talk Florida State football with you, and I hope you're doing well because I know it's been a little while. Gerardo Hernandez, what's going on? New name, new name, don't know your face, but happy to have you, and Hokie for life as well. Guess who's here? No surprise. This guy comments on every single video, always one of the first viewers on our videos, and we're very appreciative of that. And we've got 25 people watching our stream right now. We want to thank every single one of you. Make sure to hit that like button because that helps us out big time. That goes a long way for us. So make sure to hit that like button and support us here. We're going to get back to Nick here on the line. Nick, how you doing? I'm doing all right, man. What's going on? How you doing during all this quarantine?
You know, man, just stuck in the house, going to work and playing video games.
I feel that. I think that's what everybody's doing.
Just busy this whole thing to be over, man.
I think we all are, man. I think we all are. I've got one caller here. I'm going to put them on hold and get right back to you, all right?
Good one.
Call from Madison.
All right.
To accept, press.
Madison, we're going to finish talking up with Nick here, and we'll get right to you.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Nick, we're back. What's going on?
Not much, man. This is your prediction for Georgia's season, if we even have a college football season in 2020.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, and obviously something that's really, really scary to even think about not even having a season. But I remember you being a huge Georgia fan. We always talking Georgia football during last year, and let me tell you what, I want to get your take after I give you mine. But I think, going into this season, before all these quarterbacks entered the transfer portal and before we, started seeing the differences and changes, I think a lot of people were starting to pick Florida above Georgia to win the SEC East. They thought, this could be the year that Florida finally jumps them, maybe beats an Alabama or LSU or whoever in the SEC championship game and makes that case for the college football playoff. But then Jamie Newman decided to transfer from Wake Forest to Georgia. And I know a lot of people out there have their doubts about him. They're very concerned about him. But I think that is the best thing that could happen to Georgia this entire offseason. When you lose a 3-year starter in Jake Fromm, bringing in another experienced quarterback from a Power 5 school, a dual threat at that, because that's going to give this offense just a bigger dynamic. That run-pass option with Jamie Newman is going to be so difficult, especially when you've got such a powerful run game at Georgia anyways. So, I was almost jumping on that bandwagon of maybe saying, all right, Florida, this could be the year that they take down the Dogs. And then Newman came along, and I was like, never mind. So I'm thinking, potentially undefeated, 11-1, pretty much a season that we've seen the past 2-3 years under Kirby Smart. They're going to be playoff contenders again, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, man, I see undefeated season this year. I think we're winning all this year.
You think you're going to win the whole thing, the whole college football playoff?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would love to see that. I think a lot of people would love to see someone else take it down. LSU was new in a way this past year, but LSU for the longest time has been a dynasty. They're always contenders.
Because that game against Alabama, I think it's the third game, I believe, is going to be huge. I mean,
that is going. You're right. That is going to be a huge, huge game, and that's going to be, to me, a very big telling point. That's probably going to be Newman's biggest test of the year at that point. I think they open up the season against Virginia, so that's no cakewalk, but they should take care of the Cavaliers there. But then Alabama, that's going to be the million-dollar question. And if there's going to be a loss on Georgia's schedule, I think their toughest 2 games are going to be Alabama and then Florida. I think those are your top 2 that you really have to watch out for. And then after that, you should be smooth sailing. The problem is, if you lose both of those games, which I don't think they will, I think they at least split them. But if you do, then your title hopes are done.
Hey, man, I've got another question. Do you feel like these teams actually making a bowl game? Auburn, Tennessee, Nebraska, and Arizona State.
I would definitely say Auburn will make a bowl game. I think, they won 8 or 9 games this past year with a true freshman quarterback in Bo Nix, and now they bring in Chad Morris as offensive coordinator. And, he gets a lot of hate. Morris gets a lot of hate and a lot of flack for how bad he did at Arkansas, but he is a good offensive mind. He's not cut out to be a head coach, but he is as a coordinator. Tennessee is one of those sleeper picks in the SEC this year that is not going to win the SEC, is not going to win the SEC East because Florida and Georgia are the kings of that division right now. But Tennessee is a team that could very well win 8 or 9 games, in my opinion. So they're going to go bowling. I believe Arizona State will as well. They lose Brandon Ayuk at wide receiver, one of the best in this year's draft. But Jaden Daniels, also a true freshman quarterback, played lights out. And Herm Edwards, in his first 2 years with the Sun Devils, I think has exceeded expectations. So I don't expect them to take a step back.
That's actually my dark horse pick for the Pac-12.
Yeah.
In 2020.
Yeah, I would agree.
So is Nebraska for some odd reason. I don't know why, bro. I just think like this year Nebraska shot. I don't know why. They gotta do something in the Big Ten, or Scott Frost was used to that.
I fully agree. We always say coaches need about 3 or 4 years to, really get their guys in place, implement their system. Well, Scott Frost is entering year 3, and there's really been no improvement whatsoever. That first year was a disaster. They got hot towards the end. Year 2, everybody thought they might break through and win the West. Didn't even go bowling. All Scott Frost has to do this year to get the monkey off his back is just make a bowl game. Even if that's 6-6, they just got to get there. But I don't know what it's going to take for him. Martinez has to start playing much better. The defense has really got to step up. They've been atrocious the past 2 years. But I think Scott Frost, I think everybody at Nebraska knows this is their make or break year. Even if they go 4-8, 5-7, I don't think he's fired. I think they've got to give him a little more time than that. But they know that if that's the case, then year 4, it's make or break. And if he fails again, he's done. And that would be a shame because he's a great guy. I think he's a great coach. He's a Nebraska guy. He's a Nebraska alum. Great quarterback for them back in the day. You'd hate to see, all of that go to waste right here,
Yeah, man. Do you think it was Clay Helton's last year?
It's Clay Helton's last year unless he wins 8 games. I think 8 games is the limit for USC this year, and it might even have to be more than that. And we're going to have a video out next week over coaches on the hot seat, and Helton is going to be towards the top of that list. So definitely don't miss that. But USC is going to have to be either making the Pac-12 championship with a good record, because the Pac-12's weak at times. So they've either got to get to the Pac-12 championship and then get to a New Year's Six bowl game, or they've got to have an 8 or 9 win season before that. Even if they don't make the championship, they've got to have an 8 or 9 win season just to even have a chance at him saving his job. But let me tell you, Keaton Slovis is the real deal. Those wide receivers at USC are the real deal. This is the year that they have the talent to actually get back to the days that we saw a few years ago with guys like Sam Darnold and Juju and all those guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, so they open up against Alabama. I was like, that's probably not going to be a win.
No, well, you can't judge his year with the loss against Alabama. It's going to come down to how he fares against conference opponents. That's going to be the $1 million question. And even if they can just hang with Alabama, if they can keep that Alabama game close, that might just be good enough to give people some false hope or enough hope, and then maybe turn it into a pretty decent season for the Trojans.
Do you see JT Daniels going to Michigan?
Is that official that he's going to Michigan?
No, it was just a rumor. It's a rumor like he's either going to Michigan or Tennessee.
Yeah, and we'll make this the last one here so we can get some other callers. But JT Daniels, as many of you know, one of the biggest quarterback transfers and biggest news we've had in college football this past few weeks. I've heard Michigan. I've certainly heard Tennessee. I've also heard mixtures of Ole Miss because of Lane Kiffin and the ties to USC, and also San Diego State. Jack Sears went down to San Diego State, and there's rumors that Daniels might go there as well to try to get that starting job with Brady Hoke now. But if he wants to play at an elite level like he would have at USC, then he needs to go to the SEC or to Michigan if he's strongly considering those.
All right, bro. Thanks for taking my call, man.
Hey, absolutely, Nick. Always a pleasure talking to you.
All right,
bro. All right. So that was Nick. Always a good time talking with him. Always bringing some solid insight. Big-time Georgia fan. And we've had Madison on hold for way too long now. So, Madison, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you handling all this quarantine?
It's not too bad. Getting a lot of homework done in video game time, so it's not too bad.
Well, you're just like Nick then, so I think we're all in the same boat.
So my first question is, how do you think the Falcons are going to look this next season?
All right, so we're switching over to NFL talk here, and Madison, I'm going to answer this call and put him on hold, and we're going to get right to your Falcons question.
Okay. Call from Hello?
Hey, Bub, we're going to put you on hold for 1 second.
All right.
All right, so getting back to Madison here, we're switching to NFL talk naturally because this NFL draft is coming up tomorrow. Falcons, Madison, I think you can agree, if you're a Falcons fan, they really haven't been the same since Super Bowl 51. Since they kind of collapsed against the Patriots, they really never were able to get back on their feet. And that's been about 3-4 years now. The thing is, the Falcons have a lot of talent. I still view Matt Ryan as a tier 1 or middle between tier 1, tier 2 quarterback in the NFL. Julio Jones is still one of the best receivers in the NFL. But I tell you what, the biggest thing that's going to transform this entire Falcons team is the fact they just landed Todd Gurley. It's the fact that Todd Gurley just left or was released from the Rams out in L.A., and now he's found his way back in Georgia to play with the Falcons. And you put him in a division, a running back like that, an offense like that, which now consists of, Tom Brady with the Buccaneers, Christian McCaffrey and Bridgewater at the Panthers, and then, of course, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, guys like that, the Saints. The NFC South has quickly become one of the toughest divisions in the entire NFL, which is a good thing and a bad thing for every team involved in that division. But I will tell you that I think Dan Quinn is one of the most underrated coaches in the entire league right now. And I think the Falcons, they're not going to have a season like they did a few years ago when they made that Super Bowl run, 14-2, 15-1, whatever it was. But this is a team that should win at least, if they play their cards right, with the talent they have, should win at least 10 games. They'll sneak in there either as a division champion or a wild card team. And now with an expanded playoff, those chances even get greater. And then once you make the playoffs, anything's possible. So I will be very shocked with the talent they have and the down years they've had. I'll be shocked if they don't make playoffs this year. So if I were you, I'd be feeling pretty good.
Well, that sounds good. And then my second question is switching to college football. So with Pittman coming in, taking over the coaching for the Razorbacks, how do you think he's going to change the offense? Do you think he's going to go strictly pass offense or increase the running game?
Yeah, so as some of you guys may or may not know, you should know, Sam Pittman did take the job at Arkansas, coming over from offensive line coach at Georgia to become the head coach of the Razorbacks, where he has always grown up or has always supported and always loved. What Sam Pittman did, though, to me, which was such a great job, is he recognized that he'd never been a head coach before, had never had that head coaching experience, and he brought in guys that either did have that or guys that could innovate his team the way he needed it to. And that was by bringing in Kendall Briles as offensive coordinator and Barry Odom as defensive coordinator, who does have head coaching experience during his time at Missouri. To answer your question, if Arkansas is smart, they're going to try to find a balance. I know you probably mentioned it before. Arkansas under Bielema was a run-heavy team. Pittman, bringing in those heavy offensive linemen, wants to run heavy and run well with Rakeem Boyd. But if he's smart, they'll utilize the passing game even more because Arkansas has one of the best cores of wide receivers that they've had probably since the early 2010s when they had Joe Adams, Jarius Wright, Greg Childs, guys like that. And now they have a competent quarterback in Felipe Franks to actually lead this team. In the past 2 years under Chad Morris, they didn't. So I think Arkansas leans a little more pass-heavy this year because they've got the talent to do so and because you have to do that in the SEC. But across the board, I think you're going to see this offense take, major steps forward than they ever did in 2 years under Chad Morris.
Well, as long as we can play our offense a little bit smarter than the past couple seasons, I'll be okay with that. We can snag a couple wins.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, they've collected 4 wins in the past 2 years, and I think regardless of your program, whoever it is, that's just completely unacceptable. But I can almost guarantee you that the offense is going to look so much better and so much different than they have in the past 2 years combined.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling in.
Bye.
All right, so that was Madison from up in the Jonesboro area. We've got another caller here, and I promise you guys I've not forgotten about you in the live chat. Calls are coming in frequently, and that's what we love to hear. So we're going to take this caller and then get right back to your questions in the chat as well. So who do we have here on the line? I saw it was from Illinois. Is anybody there? Got a ghost caller from Illinois.
Ghost caller from Illinois.
We got him right here. You on the line with us?
Right here?
Yeah, you're on. Can you hear us? And I guess not. I guess we got.
Hello?
Is he here now? You here with us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. Who do we have right now? Who are we talking to?
Let me see. All right. Oh yeah. Extreme Kane
I'm sorry.
in the chat. I'm Extreme Kane in the chat.
Oh, okay, I got you. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Well, what's on your mind? What do we want to talk about today?
I'm just wondering if our Canes can maybe, get better than 6 and 7 last year. I believe we can. I believe we can go like 8-4 this year. I mean, bringing in De'Aaron King, So yeah.
No, it's a valid question, and if Mark, I haven't checked a look at the chat in a while, but if Mark TR is on here, I'm sure he could give you a whole lecture on Miami football. But we did a video the other day on quarterback transfers, and De'Aaron King, of course, was one of the big ones that we mentioned. And I truly believe that he's the difference between, he's enough to make a difference of about 2 to 4 wins for Miami this year. That's how good of an impact and big of an impact that he can make. And you're a Miami fan, you know it. The offensive line was terrible last year. And
I feel like the reason that De'Aaron King just didn't have such a good year last year is because, he was under a first-year head coach in Dan Holgerson. And, I feel like, it's the first year he's been there, coming in, Dan Holgerson. So he's under a new system probably, and you have to get adjusted. I feel like that was kind of more like a rebuilding year than, just trying to win.
Yeah, if you go back and watch the film and watch some of the games from Houston during last year, Houston did not get off to the best start under De'Aaron King. And now with the new redshirt rules of the NCAA, King was allowed to play, I believe, in 4 games and still preserve that year of eligibility. And that's exactly what he did. He realized, I've got my last year here at Houston. There's a good chance that we're not going to go bowling this year. So I'm not gonna waste my final year of eligibility on a year that's not going to matter and on a year that's going to be where we're going to be tanking. And there were rumors that Holgerson wanted his team to tank. That later on in the year that Houston just kind of gave up. So King made a fantastic decision to go somewhere where a team needed him, a team where he can make an immediate impact. And if he plays his cards right, could be playing a very good bowl game. So I agree with you. Don't know if it was so much Holgerson's new system, because the system that Major Applewhite and guys at Houston used to run were similar to Holgerson's. It was just the way the season was going. But I think he's going to make an immediate impact down in Miami, and he has to keep Manny Diaz off the hot seat. Because we all know Miami he expects greatness, they expect greatness, and mediocrity is not going to fly down there.
We're also bringing in 2 pretty good running backs in the backfield, Don Chaney Jr. and Jalen Knight.
Yep.
Recruits, which I feel like could make a big impact for us. Because, last year, we had DJ Dallas, but, I feel like DJ just wasn't playing that well last year. He had his good games, so, yeah. I feel like DJ's going to go to the draft this year, right?
Correct.
So I think he's probably going to go like 6th or 7th round, because I think he's just trying to take a shot on a running back, as a backup.
Yeah, I think I picture DJ very similar to a guy like Duke Johnson, who's not the best running back out there, but Johnson doing a great job catching balls out of the backfield. And I think that's going to kind of be Dallas's major role. And I think if any GM views his film, they'll realize that maybe he's not going to be a great running back, but we can utilize him on some wheel routes and utilize him more in the passing game. And look, if I'm a player like DJ, I'll take anything I can get to go play at the next level.
I'm a Bears fan, so we got a 7th round pick. I'm hoping we can pick him up there. Help our running back there. So
Absolutely. Well, hey, I appreciate you calling in, and we'll definitely talk more about Miami here soon. But King definitely going to make an immediate impact, without a doubt.
Yep, and
I'm like a new viewer, so I'm gonna try to tune into like some more shows and stuff like your videos.
Okay.
I saw some of your old videos last year, but I just don't. I was like last year. I saw some of your old ones like predictions and stuff. They were cool. So yeah. But I kind of stopped watching, but I don't know why, but they're not back. So,
well, hey, I appreciate it. I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you're enjoying the content. That's exactly the stuff we want to hear, and we hope you stick around this time.
Yep. All right. See you, man. I'll be in the chat.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Take care. All right, guys. So lots of calls coming in, and good, I will say, absolutely. So we appreciate all of your calls and all of your comments and questions. I'm going to go through the chat a little bit. We won't take any calls here for a second. If we get anybody, we'll put them on hold. But I just want to make sure we're not missing anybody. So Toby Shelfer. I think I'm finally caught up now. Toby Shelfer, when do I see Jacksonville winning a Super Bowl? Toby, probably never. I mean, I hate to say it. We got a call from Iowa here. We're going to put them on hold so I can keep going. But it might be a while. Hey, Mitch, I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second, but I'm looking forward to talking to you.
All right, that's cool.
All right, so, of course, the great Mitch Thayer on the line right now. We'll be talking with him here in just 1 second. But Toby Shelford, look, I like Jacksonville. I was almost pulling for them a few years ago when they were in the AFC Championship, which is still hard to believe we're just a few years removed from them being in the AFC Championship against New England. You know, they win that game, they're going to the Super Bowl. They'll play the Eagles. And just imagine the Eagles versus the Jaguars in Super Bowl 52. It's just, you know, that's a sign of the apocalypse right there. Obviously, what Jacksonville has to do is they've got to get themselves a quarterback, and maybe that guy's Gardner Minshew, maybe it's not. But they really haven't had themselves a great quarterback in a very, very long time. We thought Nick Foles could be that answer, and he ended up getting hurt again. So that's not going to be a recipe for winning a Super Bowl. So that's something we have to keep in mind there for sure. The defense kind of fell apart. The major reason they made the AFC Championship a few years ago was because the defense was so great. Had guys like Myles Jack. You had guys like Jalen Ramsey. You know, that defense was insane. And now they've all fallen apart, which is a major reason that in our mock draft we have the Jaguars selecting C.J. Henderson with the 9th pick overall in tomorrow's NFL draft. So they've got to rebuild back. They might be able to get close again in the next 10 years, but I'm not expecting a great turnaround very, very soon. Jaguars just have really been just kind of the armpit of the NFL the past few years, or really their entire existence, and I hate to say that. The DM saying Rutgers has the number 11 2021 recruiting class. Only Schiano could achieve this, and he's exactly right. Greg Schiano coming back to Rutgers after a very long break. I believe it was almost 10 years, if not longer, right? Close to that, since he last coached the Scarlet Knights. And now he returns. I agree. There's only one person that could have gotten Rutgers to almost a top 10 recruiting class, still 2 years away, really, and that's Greg Schiano. So for you Rutgers fans out there, the future is very, very bright for you. You will no longer have to endure 1-11, 2-10, 4-8. You might have to do it one more year, but after that, Schiano's going to have you back to national relevancy and consistent bowl games. I can promise you that. Mark Dudley, nice to have you. Mike Myrick, happy to hear you're doing well. Al Servik, first timer. First time. And you, Al, were asking about our NFL draft coverage, and I hope that you are enjoying it so far. I hope you're enjoying it so far, but we're happy to have you, Al. Emperor of Rome and Cyclone Mitch once again. As Cyclone Mitch says, he and Emperor of Rome are the real OGs. Absolutely, the first two moderators, and the best moderators at that. Murph the Surf, hope you're doing well. Enjoyed talking with you the other day. Happy to have you on the live stream with us. Super pumped. Extreme Kane, we just talked with him. Happy to have you. Never an age limit to call in, by the way. Fantastic question. No age limit. We want to hear from everybody. We want to talk football with anybody. And I think we're slowly catching up here on the stream, which is why we're going to go to the line, and we're going to talk to Cyclone Mitch. So, Mitch, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you, Alex?
I'm doing good, man. It's super nice to talk to you. I saw your comment earlier. You were like, I'm looking forward to this, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to talk to this guy. I'm ready to hear what he has to say.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So what's going on? How's all this quarantine stuff been treating you? You hanging in there all right?
Oh, yeah. I've just been doing schoolwork and games, Madden, or NBA.
Hey, those are my top go-tos. And those are my top two, and I actually still play a little bit of NCAA on my PlayStation 3, so I'm still a little old school.
Oh, yeah.
But you got to get any college football feel that you can. So, well, I hope all that's going well for you. I hope you're handling these online classes well. I know it's not ideal, but I guess better than actually having to be in class, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought. Awesome. So what were we talking about today? What do you got on your mind?
All right, so I was arguing with this Tennessee fan on Twitter. He kept on, we argued about who's better, Iowa State or Tennessee. And I obviously thought Iowa State was better. So I want to hear your thoughts on that, or give your analysis of who do you think is the better team right now.
Well, if I'm picking a team right now, as of April 22nd, I'm definitely saying Iowa State just because of the track record right now. What Matt Campbell has done at Iowa State over the past few years, really, and I think you can agree to this, you being a lifelong Iowa State fan, it's kind of unprecedented. He kind of took a program that was in ruins and really was towards the cellar of the Big 12 and has made them relevant both within the conference and nationally. Going into this year, you have to look at a bunch of different factors. I mentioned earlier, I think talking with Nick, how I thought Tennessee was a dark horse in the SEC. I thought, Jeremy Pruitt, after that abysmal start last year, really turned the ship around. They won 6 of the last 7 or 5 of their last 6, got to a bowl game, won their bowl game. So you carry that momentum into 2020. And when you look at their schedule, it's relatively favorable that if they don't choke, if they actually live up to expectations like they have been, they could be an 8 or 9 win team. But having said that, when I look at one major factor, it comes down to this, and it's my quarterback play. Now, I know that's very cliche, but I think you and I can both agree that Iowa State owns the edge at quarterback with Brock Purdy.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And there's no doubt in my mind about that. I think we can also both agree that while he owns the edge there at quarterback, when you look at consistency, both from how well the teams play and then how well they've been coached, that edge also goes to Matt Campbell and Iowa State. Because Pruitt had a decent year last year. They shouldn't have after that 0-2 start, including that loss to Georgia State. They probably shouldn't have gone bowling, but they turned things around. All the credit in the world to them. But Iowa State also plays in the Big 12, and I look at the opponents they're going to have to face, and I think, when I look at their schedule, I can almost guarantee 2 to 3 wins within the conference, and I can't do that with Tennessee. And that's something to be said for how difficult the conferences are, but it also has something to say for how well Iowa State played and how good they're going to be. And I can't also say that for Tennessee. I was looking at it the other day, a couple toss-up games for the Volunteers. I couldn't decide if I'm going to give them that win or not. When I look at that with Iowa State, I look at them and I can confidently say yes or no on them. So you tell the guy on Twitter, and I'm not just saying this because you're an Iowa State fan. I genuinely believe that if you put these two squads on a neutral site right now, if they were opening the season against each other, I would be picking Iowa State in this one without a doubt.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we returned a lot of guys on defense, but my only concern is for this year is obviously the offensive line. We lose a lot, and those starters were kind of garbage. So
yeah, well, I was going to say the defense should be solid. You've got a great quarterback, but we saw that with not saying that Miami had good quarterbacks, but we've seen that at Miami and other teams where you can have decent quarterback play, but if you don't have an offensive line to protect them, you're done. Your team's toast. And that's something that Campbell's definitely going to have to address. And I know you lost a couple decent receivers in there as well, and that's something that Purdy's going to have to be able to address as well, is building chemistry with some new receivers rather quickly, especially when he doesn't have maybe a lot of time to throw. But I've always said that in the Big 12, it's a conference dominated by offense. But if you can just have a pretty decent offense and then have a mediocre defense to go along with it, you have a very good chance of winning the conference just because no one plays defense within there. And that's an edge that I think Iowa State will have over many of them, maybe probably half, so over at least 5 or 6 of the other Big 12 teams. And so that's definitely another good sign for y'all to go at least 7-5, if not better. I know that would probably be a little bit of a disappointment for you.
Oh, yeah. I don't know about you, but I think we're taking down the dogs at Oklahoma this year. I think we're going to take down the Sooners.
Think you're going to take down the Sooners again? From a few years ago? You did a few years ago. Almost beat them last year. Should have beat them last year.
Yeah.
That game is in Ames, if I'm not mistaken. Isn't that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what. If that game, which we won't know until closer to time, but if that game is a night game in Ames, I think I might be leaning Cyclones away there as well. That's one of the most difficult places to play in all of college football, and it's extremely underrated, especially at night, almost relative to Kinnick Stadium. So something about the state of Iowa, man, I don't know what it is, but Iowa State and Iowa have two of the most difficult places to play in their respective conferences. And if they take down Oklahoma, then there's a very good chance they're gonna make an appearance in the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, you gotta credit the Busch Light beer company there.
Credit Busch Light for the home field advantage.
Oh yeah.
I love it. Well, Mitch, I appreciate you for calling in, man, and I know this will not be the last time that we discuss either within the comments or here on a call as well. So, but no, you tell the guy on Twitter, Iowa State, without a doubt, it's got that slight edge over Tennessee right now.
Oh yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you calling in, and we'll definitely talk soon.
All right. Have a good night and be safe.
All right, you too, man. I appreciate it. All right, so that was Cyclone Mitch. As many of you know, he is one of our moderators, one of our most frequent commenters. Guy absolutely knows his football. Big Iowa State fan as well. So we were super happy to have him. Good discussion there between Iowa State and Tennessee. And once again, we do apologize for those of you watching. I know we might be lagging a little bit. I know the footage might be a little grainy. We're obviously trying to deal with this new encoding software that YouTube is trying to implement with their live streams. Nothing's ever simple anymore. Bigger does not always mean better. I wish YouTube understood that, but hey, we're doing the best we can. So thank you all for bearing with us, and thank you all for the fantastic questions and comments. So I'm looking through the rest of here. Want to make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions within the chat. We're going to touch on those. Ryan Mell saying, I didn't buy Nebraska last year, but they need a decent year. And he's exactly right. I was one of the guys that drank the Nebraska Kool-Aid, unfortunately. I was one of the guys that really bought into Scott Frost and the Cornhuskers in year 2, thought they could be a 9-10 win team, might make the Big Ten championship just because the Big Ten West was so up in the air. It was so, no one knew who was going to win. You had guys at Wisconsin, you had Iowa, you had Nebraska, you had Minnesota. No one knew what to expect. And ultimately, ended up being Wisconsin, who kind of made a resurgence after a disappointing 2018 campaign. But I drank that Kool-Aid, but you're right. Everybody's right. Ryan Mell, especially here, they've got to have a good year in 2020. If they don't, Scott Frost could be gone, depending on how bad it is. If they don't get rid of him, then year 4 is the make or break year. And you would hate to see Scott Frost, Nebraska's golden boy, come back, fail, and get fired within 3 or 4 years. Nebraska football has not been elite, really, in a very, very long time. And you hate that because they used to be. Emperor of Rome keeping the great running joke going. Akron, the 2020 national champions. Look, I would love to bet $5 on that. Can't imagine what the payout would be, what the odds are for Akron to take home a crown in 2020. Still a little bitter they rejected my application to become head coach there, but hey, so be it. All good. Emperor of Rome also saying that he thinks the Falcons will be better but won't make the playoffs. And, if we switch gears to the NFL for a second, the beauty of the NFL for some of these teams that were borderline, in a borderline team, maybe like the Falcons now, is that they did expand the playoffs to 7 teams. And that's a conversation we can have for another time, because I could go on and on about that NFL playoff expansion. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm a big guy. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I thought the playoff system was working well. I also thought if you're going to expand, make it 8. I know that's half of each conference. I know that's half of the AFC and half of the NFC that would be getting in to the into the playoffs. But 7 also preventing one of those teams from getting a first round bye. You used to have 2 teams getting a bye week. Now only one's going to get a bye. I'm not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of that at all. So Falcons have the talent. Their big 3 now is Ryan, Todd Gurley, Julio Jones. Dan Quinn's a defensive-minded coach. Offense is going to be fine. Gets the defense going just a little bit. They're going to be right in the thick of winning that NFC South division. I think the Saints, even with Tom Brady at the Bucs, I think the Saints are still the team to beat within that division. And I never thought I'd say that. I never thought I'd say, or call Tom Brady an underdog. And I'm sure I'm going to regret that, because as we all know, you call Tom Brady an underdog, he's going to go out and prove you wrong. We know that. He's been doing that his entire career. But I still think the Saints own that slight edge, and then maybe the Bucs. And then it's close between the Panthers and the Falcons right now. It's going to be really reliant on how well this draft class is for Carolina and Matt Rule, and also how well Teddy Bridgewater plays as the new head man in Carolina. McCaffrey's going to do it all by himself. Can Bridgewater get some things going at quarterback? So going through the rest of the comments here, a lot of people, Hokie for life, you call by calling the number that I will put back in the chat here in a second. Scott Bankale going out and just helping everybody here. And I'm going to answer your question, Scott. I like this one. What do you think of the new rules implemented by the NCAA for football? And that's one we can touch on just for a second. Some of you may have heard it. It was just announced, I believe it was yesterday or 2 days ago. NCAA releasing new rules where, first off, the referees now have jurisdiction 90 minutes before kickoff. Why does that make sense? Why is that a big deal? Well, because in the cases of, let's say, a big-time rivalry game, such as Michigan or Ohio State, or Miami, Florida State, we'll take that one as well. There's a lot of mouthing going on well before kickoff as the teams are warming up, stretching out on the field, sometimes before the fans or even in the stadium. And referees can now eject players or penalize them for their actions before the game even begins. They used to not be able to do that, at least not that far in advance. So that's something that coaches are going to have to do a very good job about really stressing to their team. Is we know emotions are high in these games. We know this game's a big deal. We know how much it means to you. But don't go out there and be an idiot. Don't go out there and make a fool of yourself and risk getting ejected or costing us an early 15, 20 yards before the game even starts. So that's one of the major rules, and I 100% like that rule, Scott. I think it's a great rule. Another one is now that targeting, if a player is ejected for targeting, that they will remain on the sidelines. Usually it was if you're ejected for targeting, you're out of the game, and you've got to go to the locker room. You're done. You're done. And I was never a fan of that because, you look at some of these targeting calls, some are very malicious. Some are very bad. But some are not intentional. It just happens that way. Maybe the receiver or the running back ducks. I'm coming in full speed. I clock him in the head. I'm not trying to do it on purpose, but they get ejected anyway. And I feel for those players, especially in big games like conference championship games or postseason games, senior night games, stuff like that. So those players, while yes, it will be a shame that they're still going to be removed from the game entirely, they at least get to remain on the sideline, still get to hype their team up, still get to support their teammates instead of being removed completely. And then finally, the last rule change, at least a big note, is that reviews of any kind should last no more than 2 minutes. Thank God for that. Thank God for, unless it's at the end of a game, and I completely understand that. If it determines the outcome of a game, take all the time you need. We got to make sure we get that call right. But targeting calls, pass interference, catches in bounds, the touchdown or not, the ball across the plane, whatever it is, 2 minutes or less, you better make a decision. I'm interested to see how strict the NCAA is on that. I'm interested to see, how committed they are to that. But I like that rule a lot because I wish they do that in basketball as well. Because there's way too many times we do that in basketball for making sure the clock's right, to make sure the shot went in time. Did the guy step out of bounds? I think that should be implemented in all NCAA sports. So some 3 big major rule changes by the NCAA, and personally, I agree with every single one of them. I really don't have an issue with that. I've had issues with them in the past. A lot of you guys know I hate the NCAA. And I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not ashamed to say that. I think they're a very corrupt system. I still think they are. But when it comes to these rule changes, I actually think they got some right for once. So, Scott, I hope that answered your question, and I'm sure you and I agree on a lot of those as well. So hopefully that's the case. Josh Weiser, first-time listener. First off, Josh, I hope you're still here with us. It's only been a few minutes. Thank you for watching. So glad you're here listening with us today. I'm so glad you were able to catch our stream, and I hope you enjoy all the other content as well. Go ahead and subscribe and hit that notifications button so you don't miss anything else. So thank you very much, Josh. Do I check FCS football? Absolutely. Not as religiously as I do FBS, and that's on me. But I do keep an eye on the FCS, and I know my guys, Murph the Surf, and especially DM, for sure. DM, who's a big FCS guy. Love chatting FCS football with him. We do go back and forth on that a lot. And I'm actually going to try to provide a little bit more FCS football coverage in this 2020 season. When the fall rolls around, I'm hoping to provide a little bit more FCS coverage. Maybe not as frequent and maybe not as in-depth as we do for the rest of this. But yes, I do cover it. And when it's on TV, when I'm able to, I watch it. I watched North Dakota State and South Dakota State last year when College Game Day was there. Huge game. I watched their entire playoffs. I watched their championship game between James Madison and North Dakota State. So absolutely. Absolutely cover that as much as I can. And I assume you are probably an FCS fan as well since you're asking that question. But again, super happy to have you. Cyclone Mitch, absolute pleasure talking to you as well. Hope to hear from you tomorrow night as well. It won't be as long of a stream as this, but I took your advice, Mitch, and we're going to be having a live call-in show after the NFL draft tomorrow. So when round 1 completes, within 30 minutes to an hour after that final pick is in, we'll be right here kind of highlighting what just happened in the first round, and I hope to hear from you then as well. So always a pleasure talking to you. Emperor of Rome, Cornhuskers is one of the best team names in sports, along with the Boilermakers. So both Big Ten schools, both fantastic names. And Emperor of Rome's our trivia guy. He knows just about everything when it comes to this stuff. So I always enjoy hearing his takes on team names, random facts. You have a question about that? Find the guy with the wrench by his name. He knows what he's talking about. Oh, look at that. We got another North Dakota State fan. So Josh is a North Dakota State fan. Go Bison. So NDSU, reigning national champions within the FCS. So that's super cool. I mean, you and DM are definitely going to hit it off. I can guarantee you that. And Josh is here saying that if Trey Lance, the phenomenal quarterback for North Dakota State this season, if he does well, maybe test the waters in the NFL as well. One major test for Trey Lance. He put up fantastic numbers within the FCS this year. To see how big he is, how far he's come from freshman year to sophomore year will be in week 1 versus Oregon. How well does he play against the Ducks? That's going to be a major test, especially an Oregon team that's going to lean so heavily on their defense this year. If Lance tears them up, if North Dakota State somehow pulls off that win or takes Oregon down to the wire, and Trey Lance plays extremely well, then there is no doubt in my mind that he is absolutely ready for the next level. So that's going to be very interesting to see. But super cool, Josh from Minnesota. So happy to have you again. we'll definitely be talking more FCS football with you as well. So once again, thanks for joining us, and super cool that you're a Bison fan as well. And Scott, you are happy about the rule changes. The game could be shortened. Would also help, especially when games are extremely hot or cold. Absolutely. Weather. We don't even talk about the weather when it comes to that stuff. But, you gotta take fans and players both into consideration when it comes to that. Especially some reviews that, maybe they're necessary, but some of the times they're not, and we know that. And of course that's gonna be included with coaches' challenge as well. When coaches decide to challenge, that's gonna be included. That guy throws the red challenge flag, they're gonna have to make the decision within 2 to 3 minutes, regardless of whatever the call is. So that's something that's gonna speed up the game a little bit more. Will be very suspenseful. The only thing I'm curious with is if they stay strict on that. If they stay strict on that set time, will that alter their calls a little bit? It shouldn't be that hard to see if a guy's in bounds or not, if the guy crossed the plane or not, who recovered a fumble, if the guy was down, whatever. But with a shortened amount of time, will that maybe affect the decision of the referee? Will they glance at it too quickly? Will they rush their thought process? Once again, they shouldn't. It shouldn't be that difficult. But that's something to be kept in mind. Human error is a part of the game. Hopefully that does not increase the amount of human error we see within collegiate sports. John Hopkins, no worries. Happy to have you. And look at that. That personal introduction, as he promised. I like it. I can't wait to see what else we've got. CATS, 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 Cats. Go Kentucky, John would say. They've got a big year coming their way. They've got a big next few years coming their way, actually. When I really think about it, you got Terry Wilson back at quarterback this year. You've got Joey Gatewood coming in right after that. What Mark Stoops has done in Lexington is unbelievable. He is, I can't believe, I never thought I'd see the day where towards the end of the season, especially a couple of years ago, Kentucky was in the race, in the hunt to win the SEC East. Remember, back in 2018, they beat Georgia at home. They win that game, they're more likely winning the East. It's insane to me. Never thought I'd see the day where a wide receiver would line up at quarterback for the majority of the season and go into the postseason and win an absolutely thrilling bowl game for his team. A lot of that's on the players. A lot of that's based on player skill, but a lot of that's on coaching too. And Mark Stoops has done a phenomenal job, and he's got a lot of players coming in and buying into this Kentucky system now. And they've got a quarterback in place for the next few years, and as we all know, that's the most important position on the field. You got a quarterback, you've got a chance to win. Will Burrow, happy to have you. Something about the Longhorns and then the Sooners. Oh, he's saying, what's your least favorite team name? And he said Longhorns and changed his mind to Sooners because he's a big Texas fan. I got you. But Will, we're happy to have you here. Hope you're doing well down in Benton. Hope you're hanging out well in there. And I guess hook 'em horns for now. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to flash the hook 'em myself. Not the biggest Texas guy in the world, but I know you are, so I hope you're enjoying that. Least favorite team name for me, Emperor of Rome. I'm actually enjoying reading some of the answers here. Twatty Latte, California State University, Long Beach Dirtbags. Wow. Go to college. Go Dirtbags. I'm a dirtbag. Man, that's horrible. That's horrible. There's actually a school here in Arkansas as well, the Boll Weevils, University of Arkansas Monticello Boll Weevils, which I don't even know what the heck that is. I get the UC Irvine Anteaters, which I think is very interesting as well. Murph the Surf, TCU Horned Frogs, so a pretty interesting name as well. You always kind of wonder who comes up with this stuff. Who comes up with these names, and then who approves these names. I'm going to come to a university. I'm going to offer you a name. I'm going to say, all right, this is who I think we should be called. And the board of trustees says, yes, dirtbags. That will strike fear into our opponents. That will not make us the laughing stock of our conference. You got to love sports. You absolutely have to love sports. Steve Cook, good to see you. Go Clemson, as you will say. Happy to have you here. It certainly has been a while, but always enjoy hearing from you. Again, appreciate your support. I'm going to put the call-in number back in the chat here. We're just now hitting over an hour. About 1:06 now. We've been going on the live stream, and man, time just really flies, guys, when you're having fun. I guess that's what they say, because it feels like just a few seconds ago we were starting this live stream. So I'm going to throw it back in there for everybody to see if we've got a few more guys looking to call in tonight. If not, we'll keep answering questions and comments from the chat. Keep going. So Steve, all the way from South Carolina. Go Tigers, but not like Ed O says. Not like Coach O says. Go Tigers in a different way. The guys that lost to Ed O in the national championship. Sorry. I'm sorry, Steve. I had to throw that one in there. But Clemson is looking really good this year. You know that. We all know that. They're kings of the ACC until proven otherwise. You know, it's just fact of the matter. No one in the ACC can compete against Clemson right now. Although I will say there are teams that are on the rise. You know, maybe Miami surprises this year with De'Aaron King. Maybe, really, to me, one team you really have to watch out for, not just in the ACC, but nationally, is North Carolina. North Carolina. Dangerous team under Mack Brown. Sam Howell is a dark horse Heisman contender. This was a team that, when Mack Brown took over last year, I believe had won 5 games combined in the past 2 years. And he got them to, I think, 7 this year? 7-6, I believe. It's unbelievable. Almost beat Clemson. They did beat Miami. And then annihilated, I believe it was Temple, in their bowl game. And guys, that's super scary because Mack Brown hadn't coached in like 6 years. So he comes out of coaching, lands a guy like Sam Howell, who's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation this upcoming year. So that's already good enough. He's got one of the top-ranked recruiting classes in the nation for the next few years. Coming off a 7-win season, including a dominating bowl performance. All I'm saying is that if I'm in the ACC, if I see the Tar Heels on my schedule, I'm terrified. I used to be terrified to see them on my schedule in basketball. Maybe not so much anymore, at least not this year. But in football, they're the real deal. So that's a team that could challenge Clemson. Miami's a team that could challenge Clemson. One interesting thing to watch out for will be, will Mike Norvell at Florida State be able to challenge Clemson? Will Mike Norvell at Florida State be able to challenge Clemson? Probably not. For the longest time, it was Clemson and Florida State that were the top 2 dogs in the ACC. Then Florida State kind of fell off and Clemson kind of took over. Under Willie Taggart, Florida State was nothing. They were mediocre at best. Norvell's going to come in, implement a style of offense that he kind of ran at Memphis. Very fast, very physical, very dangerous. Can Mike Norvell get the players to buy into his system? Because Willie Taggart's system was an absolute joke. That man was in over his head. And I'm sure Mike Myrick, if he's still here, if he comes back and watch later, he knows, he agrees. Willie Taggart was never the guy. He wanted him gone. We all wanted him gone. I'm not even a Florida State fan, and I wanted him gone because I believe the sport is better when an elite program like that is good. Everybody's due for down years. Sometimes it's nice to see teams like that, perennial powerhouses, have a down year. But Florida State is one of those that you don't expect 6-6 or 5-7 on a regular basis, and they have been. Norvell will turn them around. It's just a matter of how quickly. And we'll see that when they face off in the regular season, the Seminoles and the Tigers. How well can they hang? They're not going to beat them. I think we can all agree with that. They're not going to beat Clemson, but can they give them a fight? Better than they have the past few years. Twenty Latte, Ed Ogeron and my plumber have never been seen in the same room. Interesting. Interesting. And DM definitely clarifying that for me. I said North Carolina is one of the nation's most dangerous teams, regardless of their average record, and he's right. I mentioned that. I didn't think that. I didn't think that at the beginning of last year. After watching North Carolina for a while, I certainly changed my tune. We've got a caller from Wichita, Kansas. We're going to take a look at it before we get back to the chat. If I heard that correctly, that is Luke. And he hung up. Maybe he got scared. Maybe we lost connections. I'm not sure. Luke, if you're out there, give us a call back, my man. 901-297-4545 is the call-in number for all of you guys out there. But DM, you're exactly right. I did say they were very dangerous, and I think we kind of all changed our tune on that. And we realized that Mack Brown was building something, and Mack Brown's team deserved to be taken seriously when they nearly beat Clemson. And I would have been very interested to see what would have happened had North Carolina not gone for 2 in that game. I get why he did it. But if they kick that extra point and go to overtime with the home crowd on your side, I don't know. Maybe Clemson wouldn't have been in the college football playoff this year with a loss like that. So I think it would have been very, very interesting to see. But I agree, they're one of the most dangerous teams in the country this year. I believe they're in my way too early top 25. We'll, of course, be doing a schedule preview over them, and I can promise you this. The record prediction, when we get to that here in a few months, will be relatively generous. Because I don't think many teams are going to be able to take them down this year. Mack Brown thrived at North Carolina the first time. He thrived at Texas. And look at him now. He's thriving again. Don't underestimate Mack. The return of the Mack, as many have kind of coined that phrase for his return to Chapel Hill. John Hopkins saying Kentucky is going to get 10 wins in the regular season. He has them losing to Florida and Georgia, understandably, arguably the top 2 teams in the SEC East. But he does have Kentucky upsetting Auburn. And I think, John, first off, if Kentucky gets 10 wins in the regular season, that's a bigger sign of the apocalypse than the Jaguars and the Eagles meeting in the Super Bowl like we mentioned earlier. That'd be unbelievable. 10 in the regular season with a chance at 11, depending on if they win their bowl game. Biggest thing, John, and this goes for every team out there, especially Kentucky, though, can they stay healthy? You know, when you bring back a quarterback like Terry Wilson, who was hurt practically all of last year, returning players from injury is risky because there's a chance they could get re-injured. They're more susceptible to injury the second time around. And if he goes down, they don't have a guy like Lynn Bowden to step behind center and run this offense that somehow no one could stop. If Kentucky stays healthy, however, the schedule is favorable enough that they very well could win, I say 8 in the regular season. 10's pushing it, but I love the enthusiasm. I love the optimism. And personally, I would love to see it. We're getting a call from South Carolina. We're going to take this call before we get back to the chat. And we lost connection again. Not quite sure what happened. Not quite sure what's going on here. It's 2 callers from Kansas and South Carolina that didn't work out for us. But keep calling in 901-297-4545. We do want to hear from you. Eventually this connection will get regained and worked out here in a second. I'm not sure what's going on. John Sarian, good to have you first off. Happy to see you. Anyone thinking some schools will be changing their sports programs after this shutdown, maybe dropping some sports that are not generating much revenue? Well, we're already seeing that, John. And here comes Steve again from South Carolina. Let's see if we can get him on the line.
Call from. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
There we go. Steve, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you, man.
All right. What's going on, Steve? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great, man. You know, this is what we love to be doing. Just love to be talking ball with you guys. So I'm ready to hear what you got to say.
Yeah, man, listen, I want to ask you a question. If the season doesn't pan out with the virus and everything, don't you think that we've seen the last of Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields and everything? Don't you think that they'll go ahead and foreclose their their eligibility to turn pro?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And that's going to be really interesting to see how the NCAA handles that if we don't have a season. But I agree with you. I think you're exactly right. It was surprising enough. I mean, they didn't have much of a choice. I mean, Lawrence and Fields had to stay around one more year anyways. But if this year doesn't happen, we don't play in the fall, if we don't play in the spring, like some are saying could happen, then I think the NCAA has to say, all right, we kind of waived this year. If you would have been eligible after this season concluded, you're allowed to go pro if you so choose. And I think Fields and Lawrence are two of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterbacks in the country. They know that. I don't see any way that they decide to come back because they've both done their job. Lawrence has won a national championship. Fields almost won, got to the national championship, I should say. That was a fantastic Fiesta Bowl. But, yeah, I agree. Some of the elite prospects out there that are at the top of these 2021 mock drafts, if for some reason, and I hope that's not the case, if we don't have a season, they're without a doubt going pro, assuming the NCAA would allow that.
I still would love to see them play for the finals and for the championship and go out because I'm going to tell you something. Both teams left it on the field last year. That, to me, was one of the greatest games I've ever seen, in a long, long time. So, anyway, it's been good talking to you. And have a good night here.
All right, you appreciate it, Steve. You too.
Yeah, man.
So that was Steve Cook all the way out from South Carolina, making a very good point. Something that we really haven't thought about or talked about. If the season does not happen in the fall, and maybe they don't play in the spring, like some have, proposed, we do have players that after this year would have concluded would be eligible for the NFL draft. We have seniors that one way or another would have to either go pro or just decide to end their football career completely, which leads us to the question, the guys that would be eligible at the end of this year, guys that are maybe sophomores that have played 2 years, whatever it is, does the NCAA waive it, say, all right, we pretend like this year technically happened, you are now eligible to go pro. That's exactly what they should do. It's exactly what they should do because when you're a quarterback, especially when you're an athlete, period, every year counts. Sometimes some of these players don't have time to sit back and say, oh, yeah, I've got another year to kill in college. Some of them need to get to the next level for financial help, for themselves, for their families. And some of these guys don't have a very long lifespan in the league. What I mean by that is, we're seeing more and more players now retiring before they even hit 30 years old. And so you waste another year in college, or you choose to, sometimes it's your choice, but if the NCAA didn't allow it, then that's where it would be a little more corrupt and would throw a wrinkle on a lot of people's plans. So a fantastic question posed by Steve, one that I do think the NCAA will have to do. They won't have a choice but to let them go pro. And then another great comment by Steve as well. One of the greatest games I think we've maybe ever seen was last year's Fiesta Bowl between Clemson and Ohio State. Just from start to finish. I don't know if it beats that Rose Bowl from 2005 that many consider to be the best college football game ever. I don't know if it beats that Rose Bowl that we saw a few years ago between Georgia and Oklahoma, that double overtime thriller. But in my lifetime, from games that I've watched, that Fiesta Bowl last year is without a doubt in my top 10, maybe even in my top 5. So, Steve, I appreciate that. Good talking to you. Great discussion point. Twatty Latte is saying Willie Taggart is bad at coaching football, but better than Charlie Strong. And, Charlie Strong had some good moments here and there. He had some good, he did really well at Louisville. Had a couple good moments at Texas. Not enough. He was never cut out for that type of job. And then at USF, was doing well, and then just tanked. And I think that's kind of the story of Charlie Strong's career here. Louisville, he was great from start to finish. Fantastic. That's what landed in the Texas job. At Texas, there were times that he started off strong and then kind of collapsed, and that's exactly what he did at South Florida. He started strong and then collapsed. And he also inherited some great players at South Florida, and when those players left, they didn't have an answer and a change of plans on how to fix that. And that's a sign of a bad coach. Willie Taggart has a losing record overall in his coaching career from Western Kentucky to Oregon to Florida State, and now he'll be coaching at Florida Atlantic. And I think Taggart's a guy that maybe smaller group of 5 programs is more his speed, more his style. Nothing wrong with that. Some guys aren't meant to jump to that Power 5 level, especially to elite Power 5 levels such as Texas, Florida State, Oregon. Guys that expect to win, and not just win, but to compete for championships. Some guys aren't cut out to be head coaches. We mentioned earlier with Chad Morris. Some guys are great coordinators. They're just not fit to be the head of an entire program, especially at an elite level. Nothing wrong with that. Bud Foster, one of the greatest defensive coordinators we've ever seen in the college game, never once took a head coaching job. Guarantee you could have. Guarantee you he got offers during his entire career at Virginia Tech. Nothing wrong with that. He stuck around, was a fan favorite. He's going to go down in history as one of the best. Plain and simple. Emperor of Rome, answering the question that has been on the back of my mind all night long. A boll weevil is a species of small beetles. They're a pest that destroys crops. And he actually knows this because his father is a pest control technician. Emperor of Rome, thank you very much. I've looked at their mascot before, and it did look like some sort of, obviously, insect. Just the name itself is just very, very odd. And obviously not the most ferocious of mascots, I guess, compared to some others. But thank you for hitting me with that, for that knowledge. Once again, Emperor of Rome, big trivia guy, factual guy. That's what I like to see. One day I'm going to let him just host this entire show and let y'all ask him questions about whatever you want. And I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the show. And John, if you're still on the line, John Sarian, I apologize. I overlooked your question. We got that call from Scott, and I wanted to take that. But you says, anyone thinking some schools will be changing their sports programs after the shutdown because maybe some sports that aren't making much revenue? I believe it was just a couple days ago, it was Cincinnati. Cincinnati that shut down their men's soccer program, disbanded it. And they say that wasn't all because of the virus. They claim that they weren't doing that well to begin with. The virus contributed, but that wasn't the main factor. I would beg to differ. Maybe they weren't making much revenue to begin with. Maybe they needed some more financial help. Maybe they needed more support. But I do think you're right. I do think that if this virus and this shutdown lasts longer than we want and longer than we're anticipating, as many say that it could be 12 to 18 months before we even get a vaccine for this thing, colleges are businesses. You know, I'm not going to get political here or too political, but we all know the economy is struggling. Some of you may very well be struggling, have to file for unemployment, might not be working right now. You may know people that are going through that. Colleges are having to go through the same thing, especially within their athletic program. When athletics make their money on TV revenue, on ticket sales, and merchandise. And then think about it, concessions and everything bought at games as well. That's not going to happen. Even if they have sports without fans, they're losing a lot of money. So, John, I absolutely agree with you. I think there will be many sports. The big ones, football, basketball, stuff like that, those won't be disbanded, especially for the elite schools, because you just can't. But some schools might get rid of their soccer programs, their tennis programs, golf, who knows what it may be. And you hate to see that. Because while we might not watch as many of those sports, while we might not pay as much attention to those sports, the guys that are involved in those sports, those coaches, those players, those families, they are invested in them. And those are people that have put in a lot of work towards those things. And you hate to see all that hard work and those opportunities for them get thrown away because of something like this. So I agree. I think there's a very good chance that could happen. And that's a very, very scary thing. And a very, very unfortunate thing as well. Luke's Productions, you were on the line a second ago. I am going to answer your question now since we lost connection. How well do I think TCU will do, which is Luke's favorite team, everybody. I'm sure he would have mentioned that. TCU, Luke, I say it a lot. Gary Patterson, it's like I have it on replay. Gary Patterson is a coach that you never, ever, ever want to underestimate. You just don't. TCU is a team that, you know, is really freaky good, kind of mediocre, just depends on the year. But the one thing for sure is that when TCU does have a bad year or a mediocre year, they bounce back, and usually bounce back in a big way. My million-dollar question, Luke, is I think they're going to be decent. I think TCU makes a bowl game this year. I tell you that. We're not going to see this be a TCU team like we've seen in recent years where they're 10-win team, 11-win team, competing for a New Year's Six bowl game. I flashed from the past there, BCS. But, New Year's Six bowl game or a college football playoff contender, certainly not going to be that. I don't think they compete for a spot in the Big 12 championship game, unfortunately. But I do think the TCU goes bowling. I think they're going to have a lot of questions answered offensively, especially with the loss of their star player in Jalen Reagor, who could be very well one of the first wide receivers taken off the board in the NFL draft. Shouldn't be drafted tomorrow. First two will be Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb, but Reagor is a guy that I would take if I had the opportunity. So I'm thinking anywhere between a 6 to 8 win mark, Luke, for TCU. Once again, those predictions will come out in about a month or so. So when we have it set in stone, official, you'll know that for sure. But I'm thinking anywhere between 6 to 8 wins. And of course, if you win your bowl game with an 8-win season, that's a 9-win season at the end of the day. And that's pretty dang impressive. It's still a really good season. And one thing I want to mention to everybody before I keep going through the rest of these comments here, John mentioned it. Steve mentioned it. We had a couple of others mention it. If the season is canceled or postponed or however they choose to operate, and of course we all hope and pray that it's not, because I can't imagine, I'm sure many of you can't either, a fall season without football. If for some reason we know that's going to happen, the football content's not going to stop here. The predictions, which is something I know everybody looks forward to, including myself, predictions for every team will begin on time. They will carry on through on time. When the season begins, or when it was supposed to begin, we will continue our coverage as best we can. It will be very different, of course. We won't be able to recap games. We won't be able to bring you analysis on what we just saw on TV. But everything's going to stay the same here, whether there's a season or not. We pray that there is a season, make everybody's life a little bit easier and more entertaining. But even if there's not, no need to fear. Gridiron Experts got y'all. Don't you worry. John Sarian, the 2016 championship game ranks about as high as the 2019 Fiesta. 2016 championship game being between Alabama and Clemson. It's an absolute thriller. I believe that's the one Clemson won, if I'm not mistaken. The one they beat Alabama, I think 35-31. Hunter Renfrow, 1 second left on the clock. That was an absolute classic. So that definitely put that one up there. Funny how two of those games, 2016 championship and 2019 Fiesta, as some of the best games that we've seen in a very, very long time, both included Clemson, which is something that you would kind of come to expect with, with them being like the next dynasty, really. They're up there with Alabama to me as, Alabama dominated the 2010s. From 2010 to 2019, that 10-year period there, Alabama dominated. They were the dynasty, and they still are. Until a dynasty fully crumbles, just because they didn't win, just because they didn't make the playoff this year, just because they didn't win the national championship the year before that, they got annihilated by Clemson, dynasty's not over. When you are consistently winning your conference, consistently winning 10 games every year, or winning, 5, 6 national championships during that time, you're still a dynasty until proven otherwise. And I think, my point with that was Alabama dominated that 2010 period. This 2020 period, from 20 to 29, could be Clemson's time, that when you look back, you say, this was the era where Clemson was the dynasty. Maybe not, but right now I think we might be leaning that way. Melissa May, long time no see. It definitely has been. Happy to have you, Melissa. Always appreciate your kind words and support. And glad you're able to join us today, because it has been a while. It's been a very, very long time. So I hope you're doing well. Hope you're hanging in there through the midst of all this. So happy to see you on the stream tonight. John Hopkins, the Belt Bowl was his favorite game last year. I think it probably was for every Kentucky fan. That was one of my favorite games of last year, and I had no relation to Kentucky or Virginia Tech. Just from start to finish, that was a fantastic game. So many great storylines in the finish. Lynn Bowden actually throwing one of the most perfect passes I saw all of last season in the end zone to win the game for Kentucky. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. One of the best games for sure last year. Even better for you being a Kentucky fan. Going through the rest here. Scott Bankale, of course, Alabama recruiting right now isn't that strong. The same goes for Oklahoma. What is going on with them on recruiting? Scott, I think obviously right now in the midst of everything that's going on, the NCAA has really cracked down on hold on, messed that one up. On recruiting, I think they've cracked down on that. How many times you can meet? Can you meet through Zoom? Obviously, in-house in-person visits are not allowed. If you're looking at it from a larger standpoint, from maybe farther out, or maybe what we were looking at on National Signing Day, I wouldn't say anything's wrong with them. I would just say the competition's getting better. We mentioned that we could see Clemson being the next dynasty of this 2020 to 29 period. They're challenging Alabama. Your perennial powerhouses are perennial in-house names such as Alabama, Ohio State, I even say Michigan, Florida State, go Oklahoma, Big 12, Oregon, guys like that. Elite teams in their conferences, historical teams, your blue bloods, they're going to do well recruiting every single year. Texas, of course, they usually do well every single year when it comes to recruiting. How they perform on the gridiron, how they perform on the field can sometimes just even help that case a little bit more. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily anything going on bad with Alabama and Oklahoma recruiting-wise. I'd just say the coaches and the teams around them and the teams within their conference are getting better. Because for the longest time, during that Alabama dynasty period, there was no one in the SEC that could challenge them. Every now and then they lose. They might lose to an LSU. They might lose to an Auburn. But there was no one in the East that could challenge Alabama. Georgia had that one good year back in 2012 where they almost beat them when they were number 2 and number 3 in the SEC championship. But the SEC East was super, super weak. So Alabama dominated. And we're kind of seeing a reverse of that now in some of these other conferences. And now it's kind of the other way around. The SEC East is kind of dominant between Florida and Georgia, and the West, while it's still probably Alabama's to lose, even though LSU is the reigning champs, is still kind of a toss-up because now you've got more elite teams within that division. Alabama, LSU, Auburn, you can even throw up there. Then on occasion, you've got a team that breaks through. Like a few years ago, we saw Ole Miss and Mississippi State almost win that division. A&M's always a pesky team that could pull off an upset which would drastically shape the standings. So, it's just something to kind of keep an eye on, and it's funny to see how the times have changed in a span of about a decade. And Ryan Mell, kind of great segue here. I said the SEC East used to be so weak, no one could challenge anybody from the West. When the SEC championship came around, you knew whoever's out of the West is going to win. LSU over Georgia. Alabama over Georgia. Alabama over Florida multiple times. There was a year even where Auburn, with Cam Newton, took down Steve Spurrier in South Carolina. There was a period of time where you just knew the West was better. And while I still think the West is better, the gap has closed quite a bit, and that goes to say what Ryan's saying is the East is going to be pretty deep. Florida, Georgia. Not in that order necessarily, but those are your top 2. You got the Bulldogs, Kirby Smart, Jamie Newman comes in. We were talking earlier that might give them the slight edge over Florida. You got Florida, Kyle Trask, Dan Mullen, elite defense per usual. That game down in Jacksonville, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, not only will that game probably determine who wins the East, much like it did this past year, that game very well could determine who gets into the college football playoff. That could be a college football playoff play-in game midway through the season. Plain and simple. Hard to believe, but it's very, very possible that could be the case if both of those teams live up to the hype. You got those two. You got Tennessee, who, as we mentioned, could be a big dark horse candidate this year. There's a chance that maybe they pull off an upset against a Georgia or a Florida. Maybe. They do host the Gators, so maybe they snag an upset there. Who knows? But Tennessee is a team that should win at least 7 games, if not more. Got Kentucky, as John would say. You got Kentucky, who he thinks might win 10 games, and maybe that's possible. Who knows? I don't think so, but can't say anything. But you got Kentucky now. That's 4 teams, 4 of your 7. Kentucky's a team that's absolutely going to go bowling. Will probably win 6 minimum, but very well could win, I think, 7 or 8 if they stay fully healthy. And then you've kind of got a little bit of a separation there with South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's not going to do anything. If they're lucky, they'll win 5 games. Maybe if they're really, really lucky, might get to 6 wins. They've made, 2 bowl games under Derek Mason? I don't expect much to change now. South Carolina and Will Muschamp, this is a make-or-break year for them. Ryan Helinski doing a fantastic job at quarterback last year. Despite going 4-8, I thought he did a great job, enough to push Jake Bentley out west to Utah. So that's something to keep in mind. And then Missouri, I think they're going to fail miserably this year too. We've talked about this before. While their schedule is favorable enough that they could get to 6 wins, Drinkwitz is not a coach, guys. I hate to tell you too. We got any Missouri fans up here? We got any Missouri fans on the live stream? I'm sorry, because you don't have a coach. Drinkwitz is an absolute goober, man. I tell you what, this guy does not give me the feeling that he's going to come into my program and win. I think he's in over his head. We've been talking all night about coaches that maybe would thrive better as a coordinator or would thrive better as a head coach at a smaller group of 5 school. I think Drinkwitz is one of those guys. Hope he proves me wrong. But Missouri, with losing Kelly Bryant at quarterback, losing Barry Odom, who obviously they fired, they made that choice, but losing so many key pieces and not doing very well recruiting this offseason, I'm not expecting much out of them. So, Ryan, SEC East, deep, yes, about 4 teams deep. Over half of the division. But as we all know, especially in the SEC, you can never take a team for granted. You know, there was a game last year, I thought Missouri was going to annihilate Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt annihilated Missouri. You know, South Carolina took down Georgia in Athens. I mean, stuff happens. So even though we mentioned those are kind of 3 cellar dwellers down there, doesn't mean they're not going to be able to pull off an upset that could once again greatly shape the entire conference. So that is something to definitely keep an eye out for. But the SEC, one that prides themselves on being the best in college football, to me, still is the best in college football because of how deep each of the divisions are. All right. So that's enough on that little rant there. But Ryan, thank you very much for bringing that one up. Ryan, again, North Carolina and Minnesota making moves on the recruiting trails, more so North Carolina than Minnesota, but absolutely. Talked both about North Carolina a lot recently, just a few minutes ago, and definitely both making big moves. I'm a fan of PJ Fleck. I'm a fan of Mac Brown, and we saw each of those teams take major steps forward just last year. Minnesota is going to be a pain in everyone's butt the rest of the, probably next 5 years, I think, in the West, in the Big Ten West. And North Carolina is working their way up to potentially win the Coastal Division. And I think if they got that chance to play Clemson in the ACC championship game, I think they would give them a much more difficult fight than people would expect. And we saw that last year when they met in Chapel Hill. Josh Weiser, once again, kind of touching on Minnesota. Watch out for Minnesota this year. Don't sleep on what PJ Fleck is doing. Dark horse for the Big Ten this year if they play, of course. And I hate that we have to say that. I hate that every week when we do this and, going on until we get an official announcement, we're going to have to be in speculation of, are we going to have a season or not? But for now, we're going to go with yes. We have to think positive. We have to believe that we will have a season. And I truly believe that we will. But you're right. Watch out for Minnesota. They were a dark horse last year and nearly won the West. They beat Wisconsin in the season finale at home with College game day in town. They laid an absolute egg in that one. Horrible performance. They saved their worst performance of the year for the game that mattered the most last year. But they play the way they did last year in 2020, they are once again in the hunt to win that division. They're going to miss Tyler Johnson. They're going to miss him, one of the best receivers in the Big Ten this past year, but they get Tanner Morgan back. They get one of the better and most experienced quarterbacks in the Big Ten returning to their team in 2020. And as we said earlier, if you have a quarterback, you have a chance to win. Josh Weiser, yes, I do have a Twitter. I will put it out there in the chat if you're looking for it. Actually, this goes for everybody, not just Josh, but Twitter, at Gridiron Expert. Freeman Allen, if you watch this one later, of course, we're active on, or try to be a little active on Instagram as well, at The Gridiron Expert. So Gridiron Expert on Twitter, at The Gridiron Expert on Instagram. We try to promote as many videos and updates, and tomorrow night especially, this especially goes for everybody, tomorrow night's the NFL Draft. We know that. We know that. We will be live tweeting all night on the NFL Draft, giving you our opinions on each pick, all 32. And then we're going to come right back here, and we're going to talk with you about what we just watched with all 32 picks. So make sure to follow us on Twitter for those updates, and then come back here tomorrow night when the draft ends to kind of hear our thoughts and opinions. And, of course, we want to hear yours as well. And Scott hitting me up right there. I put it in the chat. He did too, at Gridiron Expert on Twitter. So I appreciate all of that. Appreciate all of y'all. And John's exactly right. Smash that like button. We're up to 22. Love to get to 25 tonight, but I appreciate everybody for that, all of your support with that. Hopefully, as we continue to do these every single week, every Wednesday, as much as we can, who knows? Maybe we'll eclipse 30, 50. Maybe we'll get 100 viewers at some point. Who knows? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We like it. We like the way this is going right now. Ryan, you're exactly right. You've got a lot of comments here that I want to take a look at here. The first one is Drinkwitz won with Scott Satterfield's team, and I was saying that from the beginning. That's why I thought it was ridiculous that anybody wanted to take Eli Drinkwitz as their new head coach. That's why I thought it was ridiculous that Arkansas almost took him. That's why I think it's ridiculous that Missouri took him. He won with someone else's players. Appalachian State was the most experienced team in the entire Sun Belt in 2019. I guarantee you keep those assistant coaches that are there, and you make a second grader the head coach of Appalachian State, they still win at least 10 games. Maybe still they win the 12 that he did win. It wasn't that hard. He won with his team. You're exactly right. Drinkwitz didn't do anything. That's why I do think he's going to struggle mightily at Missouri. He did not recruit well, and the SEC is a much different breed. He jumped from arguably the worst conference in football, as some will say, all the way to the best conference in football, as some will say. Satterfield went from App State to Louisville and did extremely well in his first year. That's from Sun Belt to ACC. Not dogging on Satterfield. Great coach. He also built up Appalachian State. He had to do some work for it. Drinkwitz did not. Lucky man. He got paid. He could get fired from Missouri and still be pretty good money-wise, but he's not going to thrive at Missouri. I can almost guarantee you that. Ryan Mel also saying Tennessee has 4 games at Oklahoma, home against Florida and Alabama, and at Georgia. That if they want to consider the 2020 season a success, they need to win at least one of those. And Ryan, I'll tell you what, I think the most winnable game out of all 4 of those, I won't touch on it for very long, but the most winnable game out of those 4 is Florida at home. I think that is the most winnable game for Tennessee. I think matchup-wise, I think Tennessee will match up well against Florida. I think rivalry-wise, that's a rivalry series that Florida has dominated for the longest time. So with the emotions being high, at Neyland Stadium. That's the game that Tennessee could win. I don't think they beat Georgia on the road. I don't think they beat Oklahoma on the road. Alabama, who are we kidding? When's the last time Tennessee beat Alabama? It's been 13 years, if not longer. Don't see it happening this year. Even though Alabama loses so much, I still don't see this being the year that Tennessee gets over that hump. So I think Florida is the most winnable of those. And Melissa May, I appreciate you. I appreciate that. Come on, guys. This guy knows his sports. Let's all help this channel by growing, hitting like, and share. I appreciate that. That goes for everybody. We appreciate all of you. Our goal is to continue to keep growing. We want to continue to grow, and we are growing. We are growing. It slows down in the off season. That's expected from every sports program out there. But we appreciate all of your support for joining us in the middle of April. All of the support we've got right now, we couldn't ask for anything better. So thank you so much, and thank you for Melissa for all those kind words as well. And we'll take a few more questions right here before we close things out. Almost coming up on 2 hours, which was kind of my goal. It's been a while, so I'll just kind of go with the flow, see what the discussion's been like, but you guys always bring your A game. Always keeps these live streams going extremely well. Let's take a look here. Steve Cook. Do I think Will Muschamp at South Carolina has another sub-season? Do I think this is his last year? 100%. I actually think, Steve, that if South Carolina does not go bowling, I think he's out. I think he could have been out. You could have made a case for Will Muschamp to leave this past year. But the injury to Bentley, the injuries across the team, period. Helensky got hurt too. And then the win over Georgia was, I think, enough to save his job. I think the administration took all that things into account. Said, all right, we beat Georgia on the road. You don't just go into Athens and do that. And we were very injury prone. You kind of have to take that into consideration. We'll give him one more year. But if this guy comes in here, Steve, and goes 4-8, 3-9 again, he's out. South Carolina, once again, has one of the most difficult schedules in the entire nation. They once again have one of the most difficult schedules in the country again. That's just life in the SEC. That's also life when you have Clemson as your in-state rival. Nothing you can do about that. So I do think, Steve, that he will be out with another sub-500 season. I think even, Steve, if he goes 6-6 and loses his bowl game, they can get rid of it. Because South Carolina can win. Steve Spurrier did it. It's not an easy place to win, but it can be done. We saw that for many years under Spurrier. I thought Will Muschamp might be able to get them back to that point, but so far he's kind of let me down. Emperor of Rome, I may have missed your comment. Let me scroll back up here and see. I never do it intentionally. I never do it intentionally. Now here we go. Sticking on the bug names. I brought up boll weevils. University of Arkansas Monticello. If you don't believe me, look it up. That is their mascot name, the boll weevils. And Emperor of Rome was able to clarify what the heck that was, saying that bug names usually aren't good team names. A passable name would be maybe wolf spiders. Not a great name, but not terrible. No, I like wolf spiders. Look, Richmond is the Spiders. We've seen plenty of wolves. Georgia Tech's got the yellow jackets. I don't think we've got any, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm blanking, but I don't think we've got any bees. I don't think we have any wasps. But yellow jackets, spiders, wolf spiders, I'd accept that. But yeah, you're right. Look, insects, they strike fear into a lot of people, just maybe not out on the gridiron. I know a lot of people that are terrified of spiders, that are terrified of stinging insects. But what about the mosquitoes? Maybe some team can name themselves the mosquitoes. And those are pesky little suckers, let me tell you. They're annoying. They're just a pain in everybody's side. Be pretty cool if you could get a team like that was that way on the gridiron as well. So thank you, Emperor of Rome, for that insight, insect knowledge. Listen, guys, you're getting football knowledge here. You're getting football discussion here, but you're also getting fantastic trivia and insect knowledge and facts right here from Emperor of Rome as well. So come here to the Gridiron Expert if you want to know and learn just about every single topic there is to learn and know about. John Hopkins, Felipe Franks at Arkansas. The Hogs are going 6-6. Hog fans can only hope. John, that's very generous of you as well because Arkansas has won 4 games in the past 2 years. So to go from 2-10 to 6-6 will be a huge jump. And I believe it was Madison that called in earlier talking about Arkansas and how they would play and how they would fare with Sam Pittman. And we talked about that. Felipe Franks is going to be the difference maker. Arkansas didn't have a quarterback for the past 2 years. 3 if you want to. Austin Allen was okay, but it was Ben Hicks, Nick Starkel, Ty Story, Cole Kelly, KJ Jefferson. Everybody that was on Arkansas's roster that had quarterback, John Stephen Jones, Connor Noland even. That's 7 quarterbacks that they actually started, not just played, started. They played 24 games, and at least 7 of those they had a different starter. You don't win football games doing it like that. I don't care who you are. You just don't. So Felipe Franks at Arkansas, if they go 6-6, Sam Pittman would be a miracle worker. The schedule's tough, but the talent to me is there for Arkansas to get to that point. Rakeem Boyd is back. He's one of the best running backs in the SEC. They've got a very underrated wide receiver core. They finally have themselves a quarterback. And a defense with Barry Odom that I think is another guy you don't want to underestimate. I think John Chavis and his ways were kind of washed up at Arkansas. It was never going to work. But Barry Odom's going to come in. He's fairly young. He's a defensive-minded coach. He has head coaching experience. He's switching Arkansas to, I believe they're switching to a 3-2-6 defense. If I'm correct. Switching to a 3-2-6. They've been back and forth between a 4-3 and a 3-4. So they're going to be multiple, but that's going to be their primary. Very, very different. So a lot of changes coming into the Arkansas program, but again, I think people can only hope Arkansas gets to 6-6. Really, if I'm an Arkansas fan, I'm hoping they just win an SEC game. Win more than 2 games, get a conference win. They've lost, I think, 19. I think it's been 19 straight SEC games now. That's the first thing you have to address. And also stop losing to the teams that you're paying to come beat. Arkansas losing to North Texas, Colorado State, San Jose State, all those teams during the Chad Morris era, that's just not acceptable. John Hopkins winning is Lynn Bowden getting drafted. John, I think you and I can both agree that Lynn Bowden is kind of a flex player. He can play just about anywhere offensively. Quarterback is certainly not his strong suit, and we know he's not going to be a quarterback in the NFL. So, to me, but he can throw. He's kind of the equivalent to me as the modern day and the current Taysom Hill with the New Orleans Saints. He's dangerous in the return game, special teams. He throws some passes every now and then. He goes out for passes. He runs. And that throws a wrinkle into defensive plans. If when you see Lynn Bowden line up behind center, is he going to throw? Is he going to run? Is he going to hand it off? What's he going to do? So he is another Taysom Hill, and a team's going to get very lucky to draft him. I just don't think he gets drafted until the 4th round, which would be day 3. If he's lucky, round 3 on day 2. But I'm thinking a day 3, 4th round draft pick for Lynn Bowden, if not lower. Despite the fantastic numbers and the strength, both physically and mentally, that he had to put through in all this season for Kentucky. Not many players can do and have to do what he did with Kentucky. Not only did he do it willingly, without fault, he did it successfully. So that's why some team is going to get a huge steal because they can use him anywhere they want offensively. Melissa May. Well, Scott Van Kale. Oh, first off, I just posted on multiple pages to watch and subscribe to your channel. So, Scott, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Melissa, to you as well. I appreciate that you enjoy it. And I hope you stick around as well. I really genuinely do. So, thank you all both very much for that love and support and for spreading the word. That's how we grow. That's how we grow. Not just from what we post here, not just from the consistency that we do here, but from you guys, from spreading the word and telling everybody. Every subscriber and view counts. A lot of people take those for granted. Not here. Not here. So thank you all so much for that. I genuinely really appreciate that. Melissa, I'm hearing Oregon is going to be tough. What are my thoughts on Oregon? You're exactly right. They're going to be playoff contenders. They were playoff contenders this past year, and had they not lost to Arizona State, they would have been in the playoff. So the problem with Oregon, Melissa, is while I do think they're going to be tough, and if Legalized Quack was here, I think he'd have a lot to say about this topic. But Oregon's going to rely more on their defense this year than they will on their offense. They lose Justin Herbert, who was one of the best quarterbacks in the country last year and will be one of the first quarterbacks taken in tomorrow's NFL draft. So all of a sudden, their 2-3 year starter when Herbert is gone, and they have to find somebody to replace him. And I get Anthony Brown, the transfer from Boston College, who will now be working with Joe Moorhead, the offensive coordinator there. And Brown, being a multiple-year starter at Boston College, being a dual-threat quarterback, could really benefit Oregon in trying to get back to that offensive scheme that they used to run under Chip Kelly and Mark Helfrich. But to me, Oregon is still the king of the North. They will be tested by many teams this year. Arizona State's still a good one. USC is still a good one. Washington, with Jimmy Lake, will still be a tough team. But they are still, in my opinion, the favorite to win the Pac-12. It's just going to be a matter of how quickly they get that offense going. And keep in mind, they still have C.J. Verdell, who's going to be one of the better running backs in the Pac-12 this year, too. So, Oregon, 100%, going to be extremely tough. And DM, I'm about to get to your comment here, but you and I, we've talked about it before. Oregon faces off against North Dakota State in Week 1. And Melissa, that's going to be a big telling point. While many are going to look at that game, glance at it, and say automatic win for Oregon, that's not going to be how we operate, and that's not how anybody else should operate either. You're looking at the reigning FCS national champions who are coming to Eugene in Week 1 to face an Oregon team that has a brand new offensive coordinator. They just lost their star quarterback and might be pretty sloppy and confused offensively. North Dakota State's going to give them a fight. But I'll tell you what, if Oregon annihilates them, if Oregon goes in there and annihilates them, things are going to be looking really, really good. Just saying. But that North Dakota State game is going to be very, very telling. And DM right here, could NCAA begin their season in October, keeping to existing schedules, September games not relevant? So kind of, if I understand you correctly, DM, probably saying, let's get rid of non-conference September games that maybe aren't relevant to the conference. Let's get rid of it and then move on to October, or start the season in October. Take your September games and begin them in October. I think that maybe that's what you were trying to say, and they absolutely could. There's nothing stopping the NCAA from bumping it back a month. I don't know what that would do. I don't know what moving it up a month would do from September to October, if that would make a big difference. But if they deem that reasonable and deem that to be more proactive and smarter, effective, be my guest. Because from then, you'd go October, November, December, bowl season, practically be all of January. And how great would it be is if the NFL started on time, and let's say the Super Bowl was on a Sunday, and then the national championship was the following Monday. You get back-to-back championship games and back-to-back days. That'd be pretty sick. But I like to dream. More than likely not going to happen, but DM, they very well could. The NCAA can make any decision they want. Plain and simple. They got to make sure it's the right one. They got to make sure it's feasible. That's smart when it comes to TV deals and getting players enough practice and the health of players and coaches and fans. But they can decide to start the season whenever they want to. And hopefully nothing will have to change, but hopefully eventually they will decide one way or another, we are going to have a 2020 football season. We will have it at some point. I don't know how they're going to do it, but they need to make that decision and make sure it does happen. Like I said, I'm going to run through the last bit here. I've got a couple right here. shortly after DN. Then we'll wrap things up here. Kicking nerd. I like that. What are your thoughts on South Carolina, Ryan Hilinski going into the 2020 season? Let me tell you one thing. Kicking nerd, I love Ryan Hilinski. Love that kid. I think, first off, their family, the Hilinski family, if you've watched some of their videos, and obviously we all know what happened with Tyler at Washington State and just how well that family has responded to that and what they've had to go through, but how well they have done that and really not hating on the game of football and supporting him and supporting their sons and supporting Tyler. Ryan choosing to wear 3 because that's what Tyler wore. I'm getting off topic from the football aspect, but the family aspect, there's a lot more to it than just what we see out on the field. But when you look at it from the physical aspect and when you look at it from the way that he plays, I think he's really dang good. Let's put this into perspective a little bit. He wasn't supposed to play last year. Bentley was supposed to be the starter. And he goes down against North Carolina, and Hilinski struggles at first, but he's got a great arm. I think he's very accurate. I think he's got a relatively good deep ball. I think, when he's healthy, he is a very, I almost say stereotypical just based on size, but above average QB. This kid stays healthy, he's going to be a good quarterback at South Carolina for the next few years. I personally like him. I know maybe some South Carolina people might not. They're frustrated. They went 4-8 last year. They're tired of it. But if South Carolina gets to a bowl game this year, it's going to be because of him. He's a good quarterback. Quarterback genes run in that family, obviously. Both Tyler and Ryan were both very successful QBs at their respective schools. And I'm a huge fan of him. I really genuinely am. And I'm excited to see how he develops. I hope he comes back well from his injury. As we mentioned earlier with Terry Wilson, players are more susceptible to injury the second time around. But I hope he comes back. I hope he comes back 100%. I hope he gets SC to a bowl game. I genuinely do. Emperor of Rome. Spiders are not insects. I'm sorry. That's on me. I should have known. Spiders are not insects. They're arachnids like ticks and scorpions. That is why I'm not the insect expert. I'm the gridiron expert because I apparently do not know my insect groups, my animal groups as well. So you're right. They are arachnids. That's on me. Thank you for pointing that out. Andrew Tenillo, Denzel Mims, place in the draft. Denzel Mims will be a late first rounder or early second rounder. It really comes down to who wants to take that, not risk, but who wants to jump on a wide receiver that early. I think a lot of people are kind of comparing Denzel Mims to Stephon Diggs. I've seen a couple comparisons there. I compared him to like a Randall Cobb at one point or a Brandon Cooks when I was talking to Scott, I believe. But I think he's late first, mid to late first, early second. And I would not be surprised if the Vikings took him, sticking on that Stephon Diggs area. Stephon Diggs gets sent out to Buffalo. Vikings need another solid receiver to kind of replace him. Who better than Denzel Mims, who's got some fantastic speed and is really, really good just one-on-one. You put him man-to-man right on top of him, Mims is going to win majority of the time. So that would be a great pickup for Minnesota to snag him, to kind of fill in that gap, and then take a little pressure off of Adam Thielen, who's going to be the go-to receiver for Kirk Cousins in 2020. And then last two right here, we're going to take John's question, then we're going to take Steve's question. John Sarian, if you're expecting creativity from the NCAA, you'll be disappointed. Look, John, I've been disappointed from the NCAA my entire life. Let's be honest. I hate them. They're terrible. They're a corrupt business. They don't have a soul. They do what is best when it comes to filling up their pockets with money. They don't really care about people's feelings. They don't really care about family aspects. They don't care about doing what is right. They care about what's doing right for them. And so you're exactly right. They're not. If anybody expects creativity and maybe the NCAA to do the right thing, it's probably not going to happen. I don't know what has to be done to change that. I don't know who needs to be talked to. Have a stern talking to with somebody to get some sense into them. I get it's a business, and the goal of every business is to succeed and to make money. I get that 100%. But there has to be some morality in every business too, and there are absolutely no morals when it comes to the NCAA. Just take a look around. Take a look at how they've treated some of these transfers. Not consistent at all. I will approve the big-time transfers that will bring in viewers and money. I will not allow this guy to transfer so he can play in front of his sick mother or his sick grandfather. Seems a little wrong, don't you think? Or we are not going to have any sort of punishment on Will Wade at LSU for absolutely cheating recruiting-wise. Go listen to those phone calls and those tapes. Clear-cut evidence. We're just going to brush that aside, pretend we didn't hear it, even though it's right there. We're going to pretend we didn't hear it or see that. You keep your job and keep going to the NCAA tournament. Why? Because it's good for money and it's good for viewership. Cool. Morals don't exist within the NCAA. And I hate that. So, John, you're exactly right. And then finally, Steve Cook. My thoughts on who will have a better pro career, Chase Young or Isaiah Simmons. Honestly, Steve, I think a lot of that depends on where these players go. I think we know Chase Young is going to go to Washington. He's going to go play for the Redskins. So I think that's kind of set and done. Isaiah Simmons is the money ball. It's $1 million question. Does he go to New York? Are the Giants going to take him at 4? I have him dropping all the way to 8th and going to the Cardinals because I think the Giants take an offensive lineman. Does he go to the Chargers? Does he go to the Panthers even? Panthers might need him at number 7. So that's the $1 million question. Where does he go? And but when it comes down to better pro career, honestly, Steve, I'm going to have to lean slightly towards Chase Young. And I know you don't like that answer because I know you're a Clemson guy. Isaiah Simmons, the one thing I love about him, I said it in our mock draft, he's an absolute freak of nature. He can play anywhere defensively. Linebacker, cornerback, safety. He does it all. He's freaky athletic. But I think Chase Young is the best athlete in this draft. I don't care what conference you're in. Sun Belt, Big Ten, SEC. When you rack up 16.5 sacks in a single season, that's unbelievable. It's almost unheard of. I mean, people don't do that. 16.5 sacks and 6 forced fumbles. Now I look at Chase Young. He's going to be an edge rusher. He's going to be along that defensive line. Simmons has the potential to maybe get more tackles and stuff lining up at linebacker. But I think better career, long-term career, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Chase Young in this one, if he can continue to play the way he did in college. And right now, with his strength and with his athleticism and getting plugged into a Ron Rivera team, within a few years, I think he's going to be one of the better defensive ends, defensive tackles within the NFC East and maybe within the entire National Football League. I genuinely believe that. Guy's got a lot of freaky good potential. Freaky good potential. So that's where I'm leaning towards right now, but I'm excited to watch both of them. I'm really excited to find out more than anything. We know where Chase is going. I'm really excited to find out where Simmons is going to go tomorrow night. Really, really pumped to see what happens to him. So, guys, that's about it. Keto, I want to give a shout-out to Keto. Players will get paid in the future. I've heard about it in California. I won't get too into that, but Keto, I want to thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for your support. Sorry we're catching you here at the very end. But I think, yes, they're talking about paying players in California. I think within the next 10 years, Keto, collegiate players will be getting paid in some shape, form, or fashion. I don't necessarily agree with all of it. Definitely a conversation for another time. There are talks picking up about it in California. Within the next 10 years, everybody will be doing it. But Keto, appreciate you. Always enjoy talking to you. Cameraman Edits, I appreciate you. Melissa, I could go talking about Bryce Young for a very, very long time. So we're going to save that for the next live stream. Certainly next week, Melissa, we'll be here 8 o'clock Central Time, every Wednesday. So we'll definitely talk about it then. Do not let me forget. Do not let me forget. But since I have so much, we're going to hold off on that. Cameraman Edit, Cyclone Mitch, we're still here, and now we're wrapping up. But guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to thank you all for joining our live stream. We're all going through a tough time, like we said, this quarantine, this social distancing, this virus that we don't know how to handle. It's a wild time. But I want to thank you all for coming out on this Wednesday night, as some of you are still stuck at home. Maybe not working as much because you can't. Maybe you are working a lot. Maybe you're having to go through schoolwork. We want to thank you for taking the time to come and just discuss ball with us. We want to be that outlet to you. We don't have sports going on right now, so we want to kind of be that outlet for you guys to talk as much sports as possible and actually hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and your opinions. So thank you for all the calls. Thank you for all the comments tonight. We cannot thank you guys enough. Melissa May, thank you. DM, you're exactly right. I agree with that. That's a conversation for another time, but I agree with your comment there. Thank you so much for your support. John Hopkins, right back at you. And Cyclone Mitch, you too. Super fun talking tonight. Try to make this a weekly thing. Probably tomorrow night too at the end of the draft. So guys, thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy. Have a great rest of the night. And we'll see you tomorrow right here at the Gridiron Expert.